make a fun blanket hoodie. First, print out the free pattern linked below and tape the pages together along the borders, matching the triangles. For easier demo, I printed the pattern at 50% scale, so your assembled pattern pieces for the adult size will be twice as large as what you see in this video. You'll also need rib knit for the cuffs, fleece and Sherpa fabric for the exterior and lining, and lots of pins or clips to help you along the way. Cut your pattern pieces out and follow the instructions to cut out the fabrics. Since they were already together in the blanket I'm using, I kept my exterior and lining fabrics together while cutting to save time. But it can be pretty bulky to cut at once, so you can certainly separate them and cut the exterior and lining pieces separately as well. You're going to want to pay attention to the nap of the fabric before cutting, which is the way the fibers lay. You can tell this by petting the fabric and noticing which direction the fabric lays smooth and which direction it's rough. Typically, it's best to have the nap laying down when the item is being worn, so you'll want to cut your pieces accordingly. I find it easiest to mark the notches by cutting a small snip into the fabric perpendicular to the raw edge. If you are cutting the exterior and lining pieces together from a blanket, be sure to avoid any borders that are stitched together, as we'll need the pieces to be separate after cutting. I definitely recommend keeping your vacuum handy while cutting and sewing this project, because otherwise you just may be overtaken by the cloud of fluff. Remember that I'm making a half-size model for this video, so your pieces will all be twice as large for the adult size. Place the lining and main fabric front pocket pieces right sides together and match the raw edges. Pin or clip the raw edges together. Stitch around the entire edge, leaving a 3 to 4 inch opening on the bottom edge. Once you're done stitching, trim the corners. Stitch around the entire edge, leaving a 3 to 4 inch opening on the bottom edge. Once you're done stitching, turn the pocket right sides out through the opening. Finger press the edges of the pocket. Top stitch along each angled side about 1/4 to 3/8 inches from the edge. Using the markings on the front pattern piece as your guide, pin the pocket to the hoodie front and tuck the raw edges at the opening you created 1/2 inch toward the wrong side of the pocket. Because the fabrics have stretch, it's helpful to use a measuring tape to check that the pocket is centered and evenly spaced from all the edges. Next, top stitch the pocket to the hoodie front along the top, side, and bottom edges 1/4 to 3/8 inch from the pocket's edge. If you'd like, you can stitch another row of top stitching inside the first top stitches. I like to do this to make sure the turning under the opening lays flat against the hoodie front, but if you stitched closer to 1/4 inch with the first top stitches, you might not need to do that. Right sides together, pin and stitch the front and back exterior fabric pieces together at the shoulders. For this project, all seam allowances are 1/2 inch unless I note otherwise. I recommend using a size 14 or 16 needle to sew through the bulky layers, and a walking foot can also be helpful if you have one on hand. Pin one sleeve top to one arm side, right sides together, matching the sleeve center notch with the shoulder seam. Repeat with the other sleeve and other arm side, and then stitch each sleeve to each arm side along the pinned edges. With the hoodie right sides together, now match and pin one sleeve and one side edge of the hoodie continuously from one sleeve bottom to the hoodie bottom edge. Repeat with the other side, matching and pinning the sleeve and side edges together. Stitch along each pinned edge. It's time to add a hood to our hoodie. Right sides together, pin the hood main fabric pieces together along the back curved center seam and repeat with the lining pieces. Stitch along each center back seam. Next, place the hood, exterior fabric, and lining together and pin along the front raw edges, right sides together. Stitch the hood pieces together along the pinned edges. Turn the hood right sides out and finger press along the front seam. Add some clips to help hold the fabrics in place and top stitch along the edge about 1 inch away from the edge. Next, we're going to match the bottom raw edges of the hood together and baste 3/8 inches from the raw edges. Match the front and back lining pieces together, right sides matching, and pin together at the shoulders. Stitch along the pinned edges. When sewing the sleeves to the body for the lining, we're going to repeat the same steps as the exterior fabric, but we're going to work on one side at a time. This is because we'll be leaving a hole on the second side seam, which for me is a lot easier to forget if you're doing both sides at once. Repeat the same steps again to attach the other sleeve to the other arm side and stitch together along the pinned edge. Right sides together, match and pin the other sleeve and side edges together continuously from the sleeve bottom to the hoodie bottom edge. Stitch along the pinned edge with the exception to leave a 6-inch opening along the hoodie side seam. This opening will be used later to turn the finished hoodie right side out, so it's really important we don't forget it. Next, we're going to attach the hood to the lining. With the hoodie lining wrong side out, pin the back center seam of the hood to the center back notch of the hoodie neckline. Overlap each front point of the hood 1/2 inch past the center front notch of the hoodie neckline and pin it in place. That means there will be 1 inch of overlapped hood at the front of the neckline. Pin the rest of the hood to the neckline evenly along the remaining raw edges. it's time to stitch the hood to the neckline along the pinned edges. I prefer to stitch the bulky areas like this on my regular machine rather than my serger, but that's just my preference and either is just fine. Now we're going to attach the hoodie exterior to the lining and the hood. Turn the blanket hoodie exterior right side out and hoodie lining wrong side out. Place the hoodie exterior inside lining, matching the center front and back notches, and pin the necklines together. Stitch along the pinned edge, attaching the blanket hoodie exterior to the lining and hood. If you turn everything right side out, you can see that we're getting there and everything is looking great. It's time to create our cuffs and attach them to the sleeves. Right sides together, fold each cuff piece in half in the opposite direction from where it was cut, and pin along the side edges. Stitch along each side edge. Fold each cuff in half along the original folds, matching the raw edges. Now, I have to tell you that the technique to construct this hoodie with no visible seams, even at the wrist cuffs, requires a little head scratching, but follow my instructions closely and trust the process and you'll feel like a magician, I promise. Turn the exterior and lining wrong sides out, stretched out and in mirror images of each other. Fold each sleeve upward one time and make sure there are no additional twists in the sleeves other than one fold. Next, we're going to place one cuff inside the lining at the sleeve opening, matching the raw edges and matching its seams. Pin them together along the raw edges, stretching the cuff to fit the sleeve opening. If you're not super confident sewing through bulky layers, you might prefer to sew along the pinned edge at this point, gently stretching the cuff to fit the sleeve opening. Whether you do that first or not, now fold the sleeve lining and cuff upward approximately 4 inches. Slide the exterior sleeve opening around the cuff and sleeve lining, matching the raw edges and seams. Pin in place along the raw edges, stretching the cuff to now fit both the lining and exterior sleeve openings. You can add in additional pins or use the existing pins or clips and just add the exterior sleeve to each area. I find it easiest to use clips and then sneak the exterior sleeve edge under each clip that's already placed. Stitch along the pinned edges only, which means there will be 4 layers, the exterior sleeve opening, 2 layers of cuff, and the sleeve lining opening, gently stretching the cuff to fit the sleeve openings. Be sure to keep the rest of the sleeve fabric away while stitching. It will feel really awkward to maneuver and the hoodie will seem twisted, but if you focus on simply stitching along the pinned edges and moving the rest of the hoodie in a way that you can keep stitching around the pinned edges, you'll do it correctly. Repeat the steps with the other cuff and 2 sleeve openings, to create your other finished cuff. Now that the sleeve cuffs are completed, it's a great time to turn the whole hoodie right side out and see how fantastic it's looking. First things first, before we sew the hem, ensure that you left the 6-inch opening in the lining side seam. If you forgot to do this, you'll want to go back and make sure that's open right now. With wrong sides out and the exterior and lining pulled apart again, turn up the hem of both the exterior and lining side seams closest to you about 3 inches. Pin them together at that side seam along the bottom edge. Working outward from that pin, continue to pin the exterior and lining bottom edges together, working all the way back around to the first pin. Now, the bottom pinned edge is not going to lay in one flat circle at this point. It'll seem twisted, but as long as you pinned from the first point and worked your way outward, pinning continuously along the edges, you're on the right track. Now, stitch along the pinned edge around the entire bottom of the hoodie. Again, it will be twisted as you work it through your sewing machine at this point, but that's okay. Ready for some satisfaction? Carefully turn the blanket hoodie right side out through the opening in the lining side seam. Pull each sleeve cuff away from the sleeves. Take a second to admire your work because you're nearly done. Finger press the bottom edge that you just stitched and pin it in place. Top stitch 1 inch away from the bottom edge. With the hood turned up, top stitch 1/4 to 1/3 inch below the hood and neckline seam around the entire neckline. Our very last step is to sew the opening that we left in the lining closed. Turn each raw edge under a 1/2 inch and use a hand sewing needle and ladder stitch to stitch it closed, tying a knot on each end to secure. Great job! Be sure to visit sewmuchado.com for more sewing fun.